the Trajan exhibition that was held here in Rome by the Mercati Trane in 2017. There is only a small article just pointing out some of the facts regarding this important issue of the very first step of making the Roman province in the northern Danubian area. And here you have a larger map, as you can see, and it's important just to have the, I would say, a more wide view of the geography and also the political situation of the middle and also the lower Danube area, more or less, let's say, at the beginning of the reign of Trajan, as you can see here. As you can see here, so where this province is, of course, there are not two Pannonian in this moment, but I will draw your attention on the two Mercian provinces, and thereafter it's this, as we call it, Dacia, which of course it seems to be a little bit out of any strategic, I would say, Roman thinking, and one should ask, and it's continuing asking for more than 2 centuries, why did Trajan at the end choose this solution to make a Roman province? Just want you to remind you that it was not an easy thing to make a province. So one should have communities, one should have army, deploy in various parts of the country, and so on. So no one would think, at least from the imperial house, that to make a province will bring immediately benefits for the Roman people, because we have not to forget the fact that we are always speaking that everything is for the Roman people. At least in theory. But as you can see here, and I would say that it became more obvious during Hadrian, that making this strange shaped province, which cover more or less what we are saying with, I would say, 19th century concept, the Carpathian Basin, had more something to do with looking over to these areas, to do it from western part of Dacia, so between Pannonia and Dacia, and also this area in the Wallachian plain, in the eastern part, which in both places there were located Sarmatian people, Yazidi into the western part and Roxolani into the eastern part. So if you look very little bit closer at this map, you will notice that somehow this group of people are somehow surrounded by Roman legions. And just to mention that we have legions in Anvincum, we have 2 legions in Sigidurum and Minacium, we have legions in Nove, in Durostorum and Troesmis, and we have something like a point that makes something like a triangle with this old legion. We have a legion in Apulum. So more or less, having a province with this strange shape, in fact, solved a bigger issue that was Decebalus and his reign, and it was the complicated relationship that Rome had with these nomadic people. And some issue regarding this we already published also together with Ovidiu into an article in 2015 in Acta Musei Napocensis. You can, if you want, you can have a closer look there. Now, I think maybe it will look strange for you, but did Trajan want indeed to make a province from the very beginning? I mean, from 25th of March, when he left Rome in 101? Of course, looking at the aftermath in 106, everybody would say, obviously, that he wants to make a province. But this is something that we drew our conclusion only as an aftermath of what happened in the second Dacian expedition, and not the aftermath of the first Dacian expedition. So I think there are some arguments against this common assumption, the arguments that I already put forward into a small review of Strobel's book on Trajan, published by me in our journal Institute in Dacia in 2012, so 2 years after he published his first edition of the book on Trajan. The very first is very obvious. Trajan made a peace with Decebalus in 102, and more than that, he held a triumph. From his point of view, and also from the point of view of the Roman Senate, the problem is somehow solved. He didn't, perhaps he goes there, he succeeded in defeated a turbulent kinglet, and thereafter he returned Rome, he have a triumph, and in this way he also consolidates a little bit his position. As you know, between 98 and more or less 106, his position was not very comfortable respecting to the Senate. There were also other candidates. It was Werner Eck to point out very well all this in a series of articles some 10 years or 15 years ago, and he was only backed up by some of kinsmen like Julius Servianus and the others. And in the same time, he had a complicated relationship with the army, who was very, I would say, not very satisfied that Domitianus was killed, and especially the army of Germania Inferior, as you know very well, who also during Trajan and thereafter will bore the title Exercitus Pius Fidelis, which it's something like they bear it with very proud. But even a man like Plinius the Younger, who was obviously part of his entourage, saying this way, mentioned very strange, I would say, that the first triumph that he held was ex invicta gente. That would be something very dangerous to mention, because all the propaganda to create an image for Trajan is put at the same level with the Domitian. In order that Trajan will increase, Domitian must diminish. And every part of the Roman historiography, at least as we notice from Cassius Dio, that collects all the information before him, he was labeled as the emperor that had triumphs on the people who are not defeated. Actually, the Dacian, the Germanians, and so on. So, to label Trajan also in this way, it will have been very dangerous. But probably Plinius was simply carrying the gossips that was in Rome in that moment. That, in fact, in 105, Decebalus set against Rome once again, and that proved that in fact the achievement of Trajan was in fact not a complete one. For this reason also, and only to draw your attention on that, we use the concept also in the Romanian historiography and everywhere of the Dacian Wars. But just to remember, from their point of view, it was only the Dacian War, Bellum Daticum, with 2 imperial expeditions. So he was very careful not to mention that he will need 2 bella just to crush a small chieftain at the border of the empire. It would have looked very embarrassed for a comilitor like Trajan to need that. The second one is that the territorial setting, that when he left for Rome in 102, in the summer or in the late summer of 102, he left garrisons at the north of the Danube, both in this area east, which was somehow attached to the governor of the Lower Moesia province, and both in the western part, who became somehow part of the Moesia Superior. So it seems like the province, I will not say the limits and the administrative limits, but at least the military buffer zone of the two Moesian provinces simply prolonged on the other side of the Danube. And there are a lot of military units attested on the field in these very early stages. So also from this point of view, the problem seems to have been solved. And third, it's that somehow thereafter they have to say that Decebalus is to blame for the second Dacian expedition. That he was in fact the one who rebelled, who arrested Longinus, and that it was all, and Trajan was in very much need to set foot on another expedition. The fact that he left Rome on the 4th of June 105, so at 2 months after the beginning of the season war in Rome, will give this impression that it was an expedition that he had to do it in very hurry somehow. So I will not say that Trajan did not want to make a province, but I think that we should revise a little bit all these details that give us a new insight of his primary goals regarding the Decebalus and the small Dacian kingdom. We must also not forget, because we will see very shortly, even what was in fact an allied king or an allied kingdom. It's obvious it was also a territory that come to the Roman people, and the Roman people decided not to send a governor, but to let them to govern themselves with some people of their own. And this is very clear looking at situation on different others allied kingdoms which receive a governor, Judea for instance, and thereafter they don't have any governor, or in Tracia in the time of Tiberius is the same, and so on, not speaking of the Bosporus and stuff like that. So at least from their point of view, starting with 89, also Dacia was part of this, I would say, Roman Commonwealth. So now just to pinpoint I would say the very first points, the very first settlement that are attested in the time of Trajan, because now we want to speak only on this issue, just pointing out the two legionary bases from Berzovis and from Apulum, which we will go to see. It's still with a big question mark if indeed two legions were settled in the same area or not. And also the very first, I would say, settlements and also military forts like Drobeta, Romula, Napoca, Potaissa, and probably Poroisum. And of course, one should start very fast with the evidence that we have from Ptolemaios, only just to mention that everybody would say here that this Sarmisegetusa from there, it's not Colonia, so it's To Basileon or Ta Basilea, but also here there are things that everybody took for granted, that Sarmisegetusa was in fact Ton Basileon or Ta Basilea of Decebalus. But looking at Cassius Dio text, for instance, there's no place where the two are mentioned together. Only we will see, you're about to see, that Trajan left a stratopedon in Sarmisegetusa, but not mentioned that Sarmisegetusa was Ton Basileon. And here we have the Tabula Poitigeriana, also with this Roman settlements, Roman forts, which seems also today to have this forma dacie into a very early stage. And I just try to make a short exercise and just put it in on the two column, Ptolemaios and Tabula Poetingeriana. And as you can see here, it's very strange that on the same spot where it is Sarmatecte, it's also Sarmisegetusa. But in Tabula Poetingeriana, Basileum is missing because it would have been a little bit later, probably. So there was no place for the former Dacian king place to be mentioned here. So it's otherwise, as you can see here, even the positions are the same. So it seems like Ptolemaios and the one that drew the final version of Tabula Poetingeriana would have looked in the same sources. Now, about this a little bit, I would say, very debated problem in this not only in the Romanian historiography, but in the very first place there. It's this mention at the end of the first Dacian expedition, and we published a short article on that in Warsaw, into a volume to honor a colleague from there, a professor, also together with Ovidiu. It is mentioned that after concluding this treaty, the emperor left the camp at Sarmisegetusa. So, of course, a fierce debate opens about what exactly means to stratopedon. This Longinus, it's even for him, nobody knows exactly who it was, who he was. Everybody say that he will have been the former governor of Moesia Superior and Pannonia, so vir consularis, and this will gain also from the text of Cassius Dio, whose mention is that Longinus was stratiarches, and I just only give you here just an insight of the inscription of Gaius Julius Quadratus Bassus, who's also stratelates genomenos dacicu polemu. So probably this Longinus, since stratiarches and stratelates would mean mostly the same thing, also this Longinus would have been one of the comites imperatoris. If it would have been in this way, he must have been a consularis, so it is clear that he was probably the one, Longinus, the former governor of Pannonia and everything else. But going to the stratopedon and going to Chantrain and all the others, it is clear that it has different meanings, but somehow they all are related to the military camp. And even Cassius Dio used it like that, for instance, mentioning the place where even the Dacians set a camp in the area of Tape, as you can see here, Estratopedun hoi barbaroi. So it is clear that he mentioned, it is the whole context, on the moment when Trajan attacked them in the area of Tape, that they have a camp there. Likewise, I just choose only another text from Cassius Dio from the time of Hadrian, just to mention that also here stratopedon in this plural form, it's similar with castrorum, so with castra, with military camp. And this obviously that draws us to the revising these blocks, these slabs, discovered in Gărdiște, in Sarmisegetusa Regia, who in fact mentioned the legions, the Roman legions in that area. They were used in this rebuilding of the Dacian, probably hill fort, very rash, around the year 105. And of course, everybody would say that there is no space to have an important military presence in Sarmisegetusa area in, I would say, after 102. But now, thanks to the LiDAR technology, as you can see here, it is possible to have, if not one, if not two, at least one large military, I would say, temporary camp, or even they are somehow related with this camp mentioned by Cassius Dio. So we wanted to at least to draw attention that it is possible now, and we have also some not archaeological, but I would say some confirmation that it would have been possible to have a Roman camp near the Basileia of the Basileum of Decebalus. And this is confirmed by LiDAR technology, but also the other argument against that was that it would have not been possible to have Roman garrison near a client king. And looking at the other examples throughout the empire, it is obviously that it was the case. Roman garrisons are settled exactly near where the king was settled in order to control him. And that was in fact also the task of Longinus. And he would not have think that Decebalus rebelled, and that was the problem that he was captured somehow in the spring of 105. And shortly to Sarmisegetusa, and I will finish. This is the area as it looks today, some 30 kilometers eastward from the Dacian, so-called Dacian Sarmisegetusa. As I mentioned, we don't know, we are not sure if indeed Sarmisegetusa was located there. But for this place here, we are sure that is Sarmisegetusa, Colonia Dacica, with different phases, and built, as you can see here, in the time of Scaurianus. For many years, everybody would have said that he made a colony thereafter in the aftermath of the second Dacian expedition at the end of the war in 106. But we now know very well that in fact Decimus Terentius Scaurianus was not in fact the very first governor of Roman Dacia. And it is clear now that the colony was built a little bit later in 108, 109. So we still have this gap. And it was probably in those moments, 2 or 3 years, that Trajan would think how he can do it, how he can deal with it. And of course, that also raised the big issue, not only in the Romanian historiography, but also in general. It is this Sarmisegetusa, a possibly legionary fortress, like would have been all the other colonies of Trajan, like Euscus, like Ratiaria, like Poetovio, like Colonia Ultiatrana in Xanten, or so on, or it was built simply as on the deserted land and stuff like that. It seems like from the description that we have, not so many from these early very stages, that the military imprint was very strong. As you can see here, we have this Decurio, that it was a veteranus of the Quarta Flavia legion, that Quarta Flavia legion, who in that moment probably already stayed in Varsovia, but also in the same time probably Trajan would have need also a place for the governor. So that will be an explanation that we have Marcus Calvinus Viator in the very early stages as exercitator equitum singularium into inscription found in Sarmisegetusa. In fact, the key problem about these early stages of Sarmisegetusa is how we can interpret this so-called couche neuve, the level 9, discover overall some larger parts of the so-called Trajan Forum. following the excavation made by Robert Etienne, Ioan Piso, and Alexandru Diaconescu. Full, and when I say full, I mean it. I didn't put here some of the drawings already published by them, full of militaria, large pieces of militaria. But which from the archaeological point of view, still very, I would say, very strange, seems like they will cover the very first layer of the stone face of the forum, which will be dated 116. But maybe still things to do there on this issue. And it is very difficult to decide if indeed we will have a legionary base there. It will seem logical to be in this way, and thereafter it will be also a good explanation why we don't have a colony built very, I would say, very early, or in fact somehow it was Trajan simply to show even to the Dacian and to the Roman people that he simply translates Sarmisegetusa from one point to another, just like it would have been also in other parts of the Roman Empire, like Virunum in Noricum, for instance. The forum, at least the very first stone face of the forum was built in 116. Before that, we'll have some wooden structures, also difficult to interpret. And that's it. I finished. And that is only just to show to you that it is only place in Roman Dacia where it is still possible to trace some centuriatio. So it's practically the only place, which it's obviously a very good. It's a very good insight that from the very beginning Trajan was thinking to make this colony here and to give plots of land to the veterans, of course, secundum gradum militiae, and so on. And I thank you, and we thank you also in the name of my colleague. Sì, sono d'accordo, adesso alla luce che l'hai presentato ieri, non sapevo prima, ma ovvio che... Sì.
Quando questi inseguire bene un rapporto molto precoce anche dal punto di vista poi dell'onomastica dei due personaggi, no, che ricevono la cittadinanza da Traiano, perché appunto Gianluca proponeva di anticiparlo ancora al regno di Diocleziano, ma se in questa fase ci sono questi rapporti così difficili ma anche al tempo stesso diplomatici, allargare questi rapporti anche a un regno al di fuori, cioè sempre nell'ambito della
sì.
ma al di fuori del regno di Diocleziano potrebbe andare bene.
Sì, e anche se stiamo guardando alla geografia, diciamo così, anche queste voci c'erano in quella parte un po' nord-est della Dacia, anche loro potrebbero essere un punto per i romani nei confronti dei Sarmati. Il problema erano i Sarmati. Questi avevano rapporti un po' difficili con i romani. Perché? Perché sembrava nel quel momento che Traiano non voleva lasciare loro di venire al Danubio. E per una popolazione che viva una vita così, una vita nomada, c'era importantissimo per andare in periodo di inverno in queste parti, perché avevano tutti questi pecori, o come si chiamano in italiano, con tutti all this, yeah. Sì, allora potrebbe essere, perché anche avevano una buona relazione con questo voce che diciamo che sono situati in quella parte della Dacia un po' nord-est, così anche si possono, anche al lavoro di questo voce si potevano anche controllare i rosolani nella questa parte della Valachia. Allora, adesso sì, hai interpretato la ragione quando ho preparato il nostro intervento, non sapevo che c'è questa nuova iscrizione, non nuova iscrizione, ma che tu vorresti datare in un periodo traneo, diciamo così. Allora sì, sono d'accordo, anche in questo largo ambito possiamo anche mettere queste prime relazioni con questo Rex. Non sappiamo il nome, ma che ovviamente seguendo i nomi di questi marci ultimi è ovviamente che c'è un periodo di 3 anni. Solo per rispondere anche a Gianluca ieri, è molto interessante anche con Domiziano, perché c'è una coorte dei Daci che fa l'apparizione nella Mesia Superiore solo una volta, nella Costituzione imperiale nel 125, che si chiamava semplicemente Covors Secunda Dacorum, senza un nome imperiale. Noi sappiamo che esistavano questi ale, anche coorte, che sono arruolati da Domiziano, che portava anche il nome, ma che ha lasciato il nome dopo. Sì. Allora possiamo pensare che dopo questo trattato di pace dell'89, Daci sono arruolati, come si faceva anche delle popolazioni dei Bosporani. Bosporos non è stata mai una provincia romana, ma abbiamo una ala Bosporano Roma. Allora, di questi contingenti dal re di Bosporo, dopo Romagna ha fatto un'ala. Anche Domiziano è possibile che ha fatto lo stesso. E poi andare anche un po' via, un po' avanti, c'è anche, non dobbiamo dimenticare che, come avevo detto, Covos prima Dacorum sembra che sia lavorata per la prima volta prima della seconda spedizione. Sì, ci sono soldati che sono lasciati in 129 Siria, allora loro sono arruolati in 104. Allora prima possiamo pensare che anche in quel momento erano ancora dei rapporti, diciamo, buoni rapporti fra Traiano e Decebalo, o questi sono arruolati in quelle parti della Dacia, nella nord del Danubio, che fa parte già della Mesia superiore e della Mesia inferiore. Allora possono essere due spiegazioni a questa situazione che è chiara da adesso, è dimostrata dai fonti.
Anche io voglio delle parole a proposito della prima parte della relazione. Come hai detto lei, probabilmente che dopo 102 qualcosa è successo anche al nord del Danubio, anche nella concezione dell'imperatore, perché come hai detto, al nord del Danubio, a proposito della domanda se Traiano volesse trasformare la Dacia in una provincia, al nord del Danubio sappiamo, come hai detto lei, che Decebalo non ha rispettato il trattato, che poi ha catturato Longino, ma anche nella concezione, dico, strategica, la concezione politica del terreno, perché dal punto di vista strategico, dopo il 102 era una situazione assolutamente normale dal punto di vista dei Romani, come dice, perché abbiamo un paragone con l'Oriente, come dice l'editonatore Festo nel IV secolo, a proposito dell'Oriente e poi della formazione della provincia armenia, parte eccetera. Lì, come hai detto lei, la provincia Messa Superiore e la provincia Messa Italis supra pantilis est institutus. È la stessa situazione,
sì.
ma come hai detto, probabilmente qualcosa è successo molto grave che Traiano ha deciso di conquistare tutto il regno dei Daci.
Sì, penso che le ragione perché sì, non potevo entrare in tutti questi dettagli, ma c'è anche dopo c'era ovviamente il problema delle comunità. Non c'erano comunità e sembra che Traiano aveva un problema e per questo, almeno Eutropius dice, ma ovviamente che ci sono stati dei fonti del tempo di Traiano, di Traiano, che lui ha dovuto adducere cittadini romani dappertutto nella Dacia perché non erano comunità. E anche questa era ancora un problema grande dibattuto nella storiografia rumena, se c'erano chivitates o no. Per esempio, Piso dice di no, altri dicono di sì, ma come si può vedere anche dopo, tutte le comunità che noi abbiamo dopo sembra di essere romane. Anche i municipi, allora non sembrava avere una situazione come il Noricum, come le province nord-ovest, che abbiamo le civitates e poi magari ricevano ius Latium e poi sono diventati comunità romane. Sembra che tutti questi sono sviluppati vicino dai punti militari. Allora, dei conventus civium Romanum. E anche da questo punto di vista sembra che Traiano voleva fare un po' di, diciamo, tabula rasa e di ricostruire una nuova Dacia, diciamo così. Che anche con Decebalus, perché c'era anche questa domanda, perché lui ha deciso nel 105 di fare una nuova rivolta. Tutti possono dire, guarda, lui è pazzo. Ovviamente che era una cosa pazzesca, ma noi dobbiamo non dimenticare come era la sua posizione. Questi re nel loro proprio ambito erano tipi di primi inter pares. Allora tutti gli altri, che sono antidinasti, noi non lo sappiamo di nome, ma è chiaro che erano anche altri che potevano essere diventare reges, erano solo dinasti, riconosciuto lui come rex solo quando lui ha avuto un po' di fortuna. Adesso sembrava che le cose non vanno così bene e anche lui ha avuto un gioco molto pericoloso, direi, fra i romani e fra questi dinasti. Lui si va ai dinasti dicendo: sentite, io sono il solo che può parlare con i romani. Bene, ai romani. Questi dinasti sono pazzi. Io sono il solo che può guardare un po' la Dacia e lo faccio per voi. E questo gioco, che ha durato per 20 anni, ha cambiato un po' nel modo diciamo forte, con questa pace di 102 che seguiamo che Cassius Dio dice era estremamente una pace dura per lui. E così lui non poteva più dimostrare agli altri chi ha i soldi dai romani di ridistribuire tutto, di condividere con loro e tutto questo. Allora lui era in una posizione che se lui non si rivoltava ai romani, magari lui può anche scomparire, come anche pure Vista, che è stato ucciso da altri, diciamo, dinasti nel 44 prima di Cristo.
posizione molto debole a proposito di questi dinasti che hanno voluto, ecco perché ha concluso il trattato del 89, era in una situazione.
Sì, c'è una cosa che almeno nella nostra storiografia, nella storia rumena, si dimentica, che Deceballus non era il solo. Cioè, Duras che hai menzionato, di Urbanus che hai menzionato, anche nel contesto della prima spedizione c'è il governatore della Mesia Inferiore ha preso la sorella di Deceballus, che era nell'altra parte, non a San di Seghetusa, cioè era nell'est della Dacia. Come poteva una sorella essere lì, se non fa parte di un'alleanza matrimoniale? Come sappiamo bene che funzionano tutti questi dinasti anche della Tracia, del Bosporus, anche dell'Oriente. Allora erano anche altri che potevano essere reges.
This presentation was elaborated by myself and my colleague from the Museum of Alba Iulia, with whom I am excavating in the vicus near the fort of Dalla Prima Patavorum from Dacia. We have been excavating this site for 6-7 years now. Terminologically speaking, the hinterland is the tributary region, either rural or urban or both, that is closely linked economically with a nearby town or city. This is the definition from Encyclopedia Britannica. Initially, hinterland as a term was used for the area around the port because it's the land behind so it made sense for the ports which are on the sea or river shore. In the early 20th century, the term umland also began being used, which etymologically makes more sense because it's the land around. But the use of hinterland began to dominate references to coastal and inland tributary regions in the mid-20th century. So this is the word we are using, even if it's not a hinterland, it's the land around, basically. The study of Roman landscapes proved to be very useful in analysis that contribute to our understanding of Roman society, economy, demography, migrations, and material culture and everyday life. From a social point of view, what we are trying to find out by researching these landscapes and the hinterlands of more important settlements is how the groups settled, interacted, evolved, how the polarization worked, and if we have migration phenomena influenced by the given center or not. It's not the case always, of course. In economy, the hinterland is defined by this pulling effect. It has the center has a centrifugal force, theoretically. And in economy, the hinterland is basically the area surrounding a service from which customers are attracted. It is relevant for analyzing economic performance in itself, but also the nature of economic relationships implied by the variable distribution and size of urban settlements. Okay, this being said, we are dealing here in this presentation with the hinterland of Război în cetate. Maybe the ancient name was Arbatavos, maybe it wasn't. It was the site where the Accademia had its fort in Roman Dacia. The Ala came here during Hadrian's reign and remained till the end of the province. This is where the site is located on the map, the yellow flag. It is mid-distance between the two legions of the province, the Terme from Apulum and Fix Macedonica from Bucarisa. But the fort and the adjacent settlement are greenfield settlements, basically, because we do not have a latent habitation on that plateau, because it's a plateau. We have latent habitations in the area, and we have prehistoric habitations. Equally important with the settling of Dala here is the fact that across the river there was a salt exploitation, which was very important for this area of Roman Dacia. It's Saline, located about 2-3 kilometers south. And in this area, in the area of Saline, we have continuous habitation from prehistoric times up until now. So we also have a latent habitation. We are trying to reconstruct how this area looked like, how the military presence, the important military presence changed it in Roman times, and who the people who lived here were. It is demonstrated that larger rural centers can also be considered focal points of microregions. But in this case, as we will see, the central point of the region might not be the settlement around the fort. This is an aerial photo. The fort is here. The photo is taken from a hilltop 4 kilometers northwest of the fort, where a Roman observation tower might have been situated, so it has very good visibility, and some structures are visible on aerial photos on that hill. But no excavations have been undertaken there. This is the first interpretation of aerial photos in the area. Oh, sorry. From the years 2000. The fort is in reality, as you will see on the micrometric investigations in a minute, the fort is a bit larger than it was presumed based on these aerial photos. And the habitation has, would appear that it has two nuclei, but it's not the case, one in the north and one in the south, as you can see. But it is not the case. This is an area which is a bit swampy. Here are houses and the modern road, so probably there were Roman structures in that area as well, even if they are not visible on the aerial photographs. This southern area with stone buildings is 300 meters south of the fort, so very close by. the more exact geophysic reading and interpretation of the site. Unfortunately, in the south, it's a georadar analysis, and in the south, due to the swampy land, the results were not really relevant. But in the north, we can see the rural area around the fort. We can see the fort itself, of course. The fort was roughly 5.2 hectares, so it was large, which is normal for an ala miliaria. And over there we have an area with production centers. We have a lot of kilns for producing pottery, so workshops. We have farms. We maybe have some religious building structures over there, and this is as well an interpretation of this first circle around the fort, first habitation circle around the fort. The pinkish ones are the roads, and the big yellow line here is unfortunately a contemporary disruption. It's metal conduct, so gas conduct. So it basically read an error. Okay, so this is the heavily habitated area around the fort, which probably was a military vicus. And this is the area for which we have archaeological excavations and we have geophysical images. For the further away areas, we only base our finds on pieregesis, aerial photos, and stray finds, chance finds. These are the areas. I used this map in Google Earth, which we generally use for registering the finds in the area. It would have been nice to show it to you online, but I was not so confident that the internet will work well enough, so I will only show you screen caps. So these are the main areas which have a lot of Roman finds. The first one is north of the fort and of the vicus. As you can see, I have measured the distances from the fort. From the middle of the fort, I measured them. This is indeed, it's only 1.2 kilometers away from the fort, but it's a hilly area, so you actually go uphill, downhill, and uphill. It's not so, when you walk, it's not so close as it seems on the map. And this is an area where there were a lot of Roman finds. We have a hoard of approximately 800 coins found here. We have a lot of small finds. A military diploma, fragmentary of course, and a riding spur. You can see it over there, which seems to be an East Germanic riding spur from which is dated 2nd, 3rd century. So, yeah. But we have no visible stone structures in the area and not a lot of ceramic materials. So it's hard to say if there was a Roman habitation on that hilltop, or if these are just objects that got lost there or buried there, as is the case of the hoard. And now we move on the other side of the river. This is the river Mureș, and this is the area of the salt mines, of the salt exploitation. Here in this area, there was a chance find of a fragmentary, of a small fragment of a military diploma, but also stone structures are visible and a lot of ceramic materials. So here, it was an inhabited area during Roman times, for sure. Another area with a lot of finds is this one. So this is east of the salt mine. The other one, the one I showed you, the site I showed you before, was west. Here we have, it's a swampy area again. We have a lot of prehistoric finds, we have medieval finds as well, so the area was certainly inhabited continuously. And the Roman finds are quite nice. Again, we have a fort, smaller, of 109 pieces. The previous fort I told you about is still being restored, so I don't know exactly when it ends. This one apparently ends at Septimius Severus. So the last coins come from that period. And as you can see, a very nice statuette of a bound prisoner. And this year we found one almost identical in the excavation in the Picus near the fort. Another area with important Roman finds is this one, located 10 kilometers in a straight line from the fort. Obviously, as we are talking about crossing the river as well as we are talking about the hill area, as I said, if you walk, it's more than 10 kilometers. We don't have spectacular finds from here, but there is a lot of pottery, a lot of ceramic material, and apparently some stone structures also existed here. So it was a more important nucleus of habitation. And we also have this area where there are a lot of finds, especially pottery finds. So and these are the sites that I've shown you on a cartograph topographic representation map. So, what we can see here is rather a constant presence of habitation south of the river Mureș. As I mentioned, the fort and the vicus around it were greenfield settlements. But in the southern part of the river, the habitation is continuous for sure. In geography, this is called the Thyssen polygon, and these polygons define an area around a point where every location inside the polygon is nearer to this point than to any other points. But of course, when dealing with Roman rural settlements, this has a certain degree of ambivalence. But in this case, I think the center of the area was Saline, was actually the salt exploitation. Of course, the presence of the Roman military troop enhanced the economical power of the whole area, but I think the salt exploitation is and was through time the center of this polygon. Another important thing when defining the hinterland and the center here is, and not only here in general, is the relief. Because having a straight line is one, and having to cross 3 hills is different. I wouldn't go much further in defining this area as a unit due to this, due to the geography of the place. Because further than this is very far away when you walk or ride. Trying to define how many people lived here, who they were, it's obviously difficult. In present day, around 20,000 people live inside this perimeter. They were definitely not so many in Roman times, but probably the physical human presence was quite important then as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalla. So, if there are any questions or remarks? So, indeed, this area was, from this point of view of the salt exploitation, extremely important because it was a rock salt exploitation. So this is full of salt springs and brines. But there are only 2 rock salt exploitation and big rock salt exploitation. This is one, and the other is at Turda, Potaisa. So the presence of the army, of course, beyond the strategical goals, is also obvious in order to defend the resources, and rock salt was important for the army supply equally. And it is, I think, important to mention that in Saline there were found also a lot of bricks, brick stems with the Legiotetia Gemina was not very far indeed, but it was important that many under units, vexillationes, were there in order to multiply, let's say, the presence of the alla prima Batavorum. Alla prima Batavorum was there for sure, and let's say a reliable unit of battalions, and but the Legiotetia Gemina doubled this defense when necessary, probably.
area in Roman times, we tend to focus very much on the importance of the troop and the fort, but it seems that in this micro-region, the focal point was the salt exploitation, was Saline, basically. And this is the point which polarized the area around it, not necessarily the troop, even if the troops' presence was economically very important for sure, because it was a cash inflow.
Do you think that in the case in the area where the treasure was found, or the other more important finds, you can speak about the villa or something like that? Or?
No. In one of in the second fort I showed you, it could be. It's visible that there were some stone structures there, but the first fort, the really big one, is in an area where nothing seems, no built structure seems to be on those hilltops. Of course, without the geophysics, at least it's hard to say for sure. But that's how it looks on the maps and physically. So
yeah, we must also take into consideration, and you've already done that somehow the fort of the Ala, it's, as you mentioned, also situated something like half distance between the two legionary centers. So they built, from my point of view, leaving aside, and I completely agree with you that Saline was important for the economy of the province. Also from the strategic point of view, it is located exactly there. We must not forget it's an ala miliaria, one of the 10 around the empire. So if they choose to have a mobile cavalry force not far from both legions, okay. The second was brought a little bit later, but it was only that in Apulum, so in that moment. But yeah, it is obviously related with the conflicts that Hadrian had to face against the Sarmatian people, and he will have needed, just like for some years, we don't know how many, it was also ala contariorum in Dacia. We must not forget also that. So he needed a very mobile and strong cavalry forces, and among these he chose to settle ala Batavorum there, and Contariorum just went back to Arabona in Pannonia. And I think, yeah, this is also. But I have a question. What about the possible place for first for breeding horses and prata? Because it would have been important for a large cavalry unit to have a place to breeding horses, and also to have a place for meadows. So do you think that there will be enough this area of around more or less 50 kilometers as you mentioned? Because perhaps this is again and you know very well, this is the question: how many horses for a horseman they were? There were indeed two, there was only one. So at least an important number of horses must have been provided to the ala, to the cavalry force. So that will be something that worth to take.
There seems to have been two horses, because the barracks are, maybe you have read Alex Rubel's article recently published. So we had the geophysics on the fort, and some small excavations to confirm the geophysics, and each barrack had a stable connected to it, and it's yeah, exactly, and it's quite large. Probably there were two horses per man. Regarding your question, I think,
so even more horses.
Yeah.
But they had plenty of salt.
Yes, but they will have also to eat something and to have water for. Okay, so it's
unrelated. They had also some. Yes, I think that this area, more or less the area which I showed, must have sufficed, because anything that is further away is far away, as I said, it's a hilly area. So the closest area which I've shown you with the finds, it's 1.2 kilometers. But this is like an hour and a half, 2 hours walk from the fort.
So on a horseback, something like half an hour.
Half an hour, right?
Okay.
But it's uphill.
It's uphill, so.
Yeah. And the whole area is hilly. So I don't think it would have been further away. This area, it's 40 minutes by car. Because there are country roads and obviously, but still, what I mean is that the distances are quite large when you have to actually go there. Even if in kilometers, they're not huge distances.
Dear professors and colleagues, my name is Dan Deac and I am a researcher at the Babeș-Bolyai University in the project called People, Things and Identity Constructs, the Materiality of the Batavians in Roman Dacia, whose principal investigator is my colleague Dr. Rada Varga. In this project, my main task is to study the Batavians and other people such as the Cananefati and the Tungri, originating in Germania Inferior, arriving in Dacia Porolicensis during the Roman period. I am immensely saddened that I cannot participate in person at the conference, and I apologize for that. So, as I have said, my presentation deals with the Tungri, Cananefati and the Batavians in Dacia Porolicensis, and in this regard I will present an overview of evidence as well as the newest results of the project. For those of you who are not that familiar with the area, I will outline just briefly the historical context. We are dealing with the yellow dot, which is the northern part of the province of Dacia Porolicensis, and which will become sometimes between 119 and 123 AD a de facto province, led by a presidial procurator of ducenary rank. The earliest one known so far is a certain Livius Gratus, attested as early as April 123 AD. His seat must have been at Porolisum, the most heavily militarized settlement of the province, located on the northern frontier, but as we know, such governors traveled a lot, exercising the supreme judicial and military powers in the confinements of their provincia. They must have temporarily resided at Napoca in an unknown location when duty called, for instance, presiding over trials and other activities of this sort. By the 120s AD, Napoca was already a municipium and later a colonia, the only urban settlement of the province. By 168-69 AD, Dacia Porolicensis was reunited with the rest of the Dacian provinces and ruled by a legatus Augusti Propretore of consular rank, seated at Napolum, while in Dacia Porolicensis and Napoca, we encounter the financial procurators of the district of Dacia Porolicensis. So, what are we dealing with? We are dealing with military units such as the Corps Prima Cananefatium, garrisoned in the auxiliary fort of modern-day Tihău, the Ala Prima Tungrorum Frontoniana, garrisoned at Arcobara, modern-day Ilishua, also on the northern frontier, and the mysterious Corps Prima Batavorum Miliaria, which is attested on military diplomas and some funerary monuments marked with a blue dot at Potaissa, Romita, and Românaș. Unfortunately, so far, there are no clear pieces of evidence connecting this unit with one auxiliary fort or another. All these three units are attested in the region after the creation of the province of Dacia Porolicensis, and the first two will continue to reside in the above-mentioned auxiliary forts until the abandonment of Dacia in the second half of the 3rd century AD. The cohors Prima Cananifatium is an infantry unit 500 men strong and is attested in the auxiliary fort of modern-day Tihel through tile stamps discovered there. In 2016, when we initially published with Professor Jan Piso the brick and tile stamps from the Zalău Museum of History and Art, we could identify in the deposits 5 exemplars, bearing one type of stamp of this unit. Since then, in a private collection from the village of Tihel, I found 36 other stamps, some of them bearing a horizontal hasta above the numeral, which indicates another type of stamp. The collector, a retired local history professor named Gheorghe Bot, informed me that these tiles come from a building located outside the fort, some 20 meters west of the fort, where the balnea of the fort were located. That is on the bottom left corner of the image of the geophysical measurement image on your right side of the slide. What we also know is that based on the military diplomas, this unit, Cohors Prima Cananifatium, is first attested in Dacia Policensis in 128 AD. Unfortunately, the auxiliary fort was never excavated except for some minor test trenches made here in 1958 and 1996 with no relevant results regarding the chronology of the edifice, and just 4 inscriptions, none related to the unit, are known from this settlement. Moving on, we reach the auxiliary fort of Arcobara, which garrisoned the Ala Prima Tungrorum Frontoniana from the Hadrianic period, as the earliest attestation of this connection between the military unit and the fort dates to this period. The military diplomas also mention this unit as early as 128 AD. The extensive archaeological excavations conducted mainly by Dr. Corneliu Gaiu have produced significant discoveries, while the epigraphic data is also impressive. Interestingly, we can see that none of the inhabitants bear Germanic names, only Celtic ones. A new piece of epigraphic evidence has recently emerged from the Roman auxiliary fort from Arcobara, which is still unpublished and presented here for the first time. A small fragment of a bronze inscription, just 16.5 by 16.5 centimeters, was found in the area of the Principia, which preserves 2 inscriptions. The earlier one preserves the name in dative of an individual such as Floriano or Victoriano, for example. The second one, preserving the right end of a Latin text on 2 lines, is much more interesting. It contains the first line, the name Arbeianus, a Celtic Germanic name, and in the second line, the letters P, R, I, N, and C. I consider that we are dealing with a dedication made by a Decurio princeps. According to Michael P. Schweider, from a paper published in the journal Britannia in 1981, these were ad hoc commanders of the military unit, namely the Ala Prima Tungrorum Frontoniana. Before turning to the Batavians, it must be stressed that except for the military units, we are dealing with dedications on altars to deities originating in Germania Inferior, both dated to the 3rd century AD and both dedicated to Hercules Magusanus. The first one comes from a villa excavated in the rural countryside of Napoca, whose owner was a certain Publius Aelius Maximus, a member of the equestrian order. He set up in his villa a series of altars, and the conclusion regarding these suggests that he appropriated different deities while in office in different areas of the Roman Empire, one of these regions being Germania Inferior, where he must have commanded auxiliary units stationed there. This is the reason why he consecrates one of these altars to Hercules Magusanus. The second example comes from the modern-day town of Gherla, also north of Napoca, where, in the local auxiliary fort, the Ala Secunda Pannoniorum was garrisoned throughout the history of Roman Dacia. Here, a certain Aurelius Tato, bearing an Illyrian cognomen, dedicates an altar to Hercules Magusanus from his position of a stator of the Ala. The course Prima Batavorum Miliaria is attested initially after its creation in Britannia and is then moved together with Legio Secunda ad Utrix in Pannonia in 86 AD. It is then attested here in Pannonia Superior until December 113 AD. Subsequently, it is attested on military diplomas as early as August 123 in Dacia Policensis, while the latest attestation dates from July 164 AD, again exclusively on military diplomas. One such example is the one of a military diploma dated November 14th, December 9th, 135 AD. Although known already, for example, from Roman Military Diplomas Volume 4, it was strangely never published accompanied by an illustration. A personal autopsy of the artifact also created some new data. It is most likely that the unit in question is Cours Prima Batavorum Miliaria Civium Romanorum. Unsurprisingly, the commander is a certain Super from Noviomagus, otherwise unattested. The receiver is an Ignotus, son of Palladius, a name which is attested in Dalmatia, Narbonensis, Aquitania, and Italy. In this case, one can read the origin, and the new reading reveals that we are dealing with a Dardanian. He must have been recruited roughly contemporary to Vanius Timentis Filio Dardano, who was recruited in the Ala Claudia Nova Miscellanea and released from duty in 133 AD. Both these diplomas reveal also the fact that there was a recruiting action taking place among the Dardanians just after the Second Dacian War, into units stationed at that time in Pannonia and Mercia, perhaps filling in the ranks after the losses suffered during the conflict. As stated before, we do not know where Cours Prima Batavorum Miliaria Civium Romanorum was camped during its half a century stay in Dacia Policensis. We are aware of 3 funerary inscriptions from Kertie, 1 on the left side of the slide, and 2 from Potaissa, which reveal members of this unit. In Potaissa, evidence suggests that before AD 168, when Legio Quinta Macedonica arrived here, there might have been a previous auxiliary fort as presumed some 25 years ago by Sorin Nemeti, the current head of the excavations at Potaissa. Perhaps one can connect Cours Prima Batavorum Miliaria Civium Romanorum with Potaissa, although concrete evidence is lacking for the moment. Thus, after the creation of Dacia Policensis, early Hadrian's reign, around 16-17 military units were deployed in the newly created province. Among them, roughly 3/3 come from the western provinces, Hispania, Gaul, Britannia, and the Germanies, most of them battle-hardened units which fought on the German limes and the Dacian wars. In total, we are dealing with about 13,000 soldiers stretching in a province not more than roughly 200 kilometers long and 150 kilometers wide, including Cananefates, Batavians, and Tungri. For these, there is little evidence of their connection to their homeland once arriving in Dacia, although some traces can be discerned as we have seen before. Before concluding, I will also present some recent developments regarding two unfinished altars discovered in the Terme of the Legionary Fort from Potaissa, the garrison of the 5th Macedonica Legion. The two altars are dedicated to Fortuna and Hygia and Aesculapius, respectively, by the commander of the Ala Prima Batavoro Miliaria stationed in Războieni, just some kilometers south of Potaissa. The commander bears the unique title of Agens Vice Praefecti Legionis, and the dedication includes the name of the emperor, which is hammered. Both the initial publisher and founder of the inscriptions, Mihai Bărbulescu, and subsequently Ioan Piso, considered that the individual took the command of the legion as a deputy of an equestrian Praefectus Legionis. They differ regarding the name Renus Bărbulescu and Resus Piso, for the latter the name being of Thracian origin. They also differ regarding the name of the emperor, Gallienus for Bărbulescu and Aemilius Aemilianus for Piso. Using highlight reflectance transformation imaging, we could considerably improve the reading of the monuments together with Sorinamity and Radovarga. First, we are definitely dealing with the name Renus, which again is unsurprising given the military unit as can be seen in the right side photo. Secondly, the name of the emperor can be detected with little effort, as can be seen in the left side image, namely Philippus Arabs. Accordingly, we are dealing with Renus, who, during the troublesome times through which Dacia underwent during the reign of Philippus the Arab, for example the Carpic Wars, the commander of the most illustrious auxiliary unit of Roman Dacia took command of the 5th Macedonica Legion in a period when the legatus, the tribunus Laticlavius, and the camp prefect were missing for unknown reasons, or were away with vexillationes of the legion. We are now extremely certain, as already proven without doubt, that the Praefecti Legionis from the equestrian order took command of legions and provinces only during the reign of Gallienus, as masterfully recently demonstrated by Caitlin Davenport in her 2019 book, A History of the Equestrian Order. Thank you very much for your attention.
His oracular disclosure. At least three literary ancient sources mention the diminishing growth, whether not disappearance of certain oracles through the late Hellenistic period and the beginning of the Principate. Among them, the most prominent is certainly Plutarch, who in two of his fighting dialogues is very reluctant to the idea that they would ever be revived. Prior to him, the satire writer Juvenal pleaded in his 6th satire that, and I quote, "Whatever an astrologer says, they will believe it has been reported from the spring of Ham, since oracles seeds at Delphi and the murkiness of future afflicts mankind." End of quotation. Plutarch remarks with regret that precisely at Delphi, where he was a priest in AD 95, at least the theology of magic revelation was still a lively subject. He could envisage a modest revival during his lifetime. The reality was that, at least at Delphi, the temple seemed to be deserted all the time, as it was devoid of crowds, like it used to be once. Therefore, Plutarch's classic and melancholy statement on the general disappearance of the oracles leaves it unclear when most of them became extinct, as Solvin says in his study of the Old Greek oracles in decline, or if they truly became so or just devoid of people. Strabo, in his geography, remarked that in his time Dodona and Epirus were quite depopulated and the oracular center was rarely consulted. So says the Christian writer Clement of Alexandria about the oracle of Ammon at Siwa, that it was honored by the desert sands and was forsaken. In his Protrepticus, Clement says, and I quote, "So do not search diligently for godless shrines, or the mouth of caves of gibberish, full of gibberish, or the Thesprotian cauldron, or the tripod of Kira, or the Dodonian bronze. Commit to the realm of aged legends, old tree stump, once honored by the desert sands, and the oracle were there, which has decayed along with the ochre itself. Castalia spring has been silenced, like the other spring at Colophon, while all the other prophetic founts are likewise dead, and empty of boasting, finally, have been unmasked, now waterless along with their particular legends. Tell me too of the futile oracles that other kind of divination, or rather dementia, Apollo's oracles at Claros, the Pythian and the Didymaean, and those of Amphiaraus and Amphilochus. But did the oracles really cease? Not at all. It was too early at that time for a statement as such. For example, at Delphi, the mantic sessions occurred unceasingly until 392, when the Roman Emperor Theodosius I banned all the pagan cults in the empire. As for Didyma and Clarus, on the other hand, at least the 2nd and 3rd centuries were particularly flourishing. It was Paulina Athanasiadi who, at the beginning of one of her studies concerning the oracles in antiquity, that stated, and I quote, oracles were the psychiatrists of the ancient world. Thus, they responded to the needs of the inquirers to receive revelated answers by the gods themselves, and are a clear indicator regarding the metaphysical preoccupations of the time. The reality proved that at least Didyma and Clarus did not cease and did not lose their vigor, but their vitality increased, so did the topics addressed by the inquirers, particularly belonging to some delegations of several cities. Either what measures should be taken to eradicate the effects of the Great Plague during the Antonine period and of some particular earthquakes, or more interestingly, questions were addressed about the nature of soul, about the ether, about the nature of divinity. And if we are to believe the Christian writers and his divine institutions, Apollo of Didyma was even required about the nature of Jesus Christ himself. Therefore, it was during the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD that the most sophisticated oracular responses were issued at the most representative Anatolian Apollinic oracular centers. At least at Clarus, we have two important types. The best oracles, that is, those which contain cultic instructions to fight against the plague, and the so-called theological oracles. Particularly, these Clarion theological oracles offer a very interesting perspective, not only for the potential comparison that could be made with the image of God as Theos Hypsistos, or simply Hypsistos in the Sibylline oracles, but also due to the thematic shift that could be perceived in their approach. The theological oracles, as they were named by Arthur Darbynock in 1928, were conceived to respond mostly to the metaphysical needs of the inquirers. If we are to trust the Tübingen theosophy, a certain oracular response was rendered when Apollo was asked by a certain Theophilos if he were the god or another, a question that could in itself contain the idea of oneness. Both the unique character of this single supreme deity called the ether who sees all, and the idea of hierarchization the divine word are most clearly stated in the oracular response discovered at Oinoanda, a small Lycian city in southern Anatolia. The ethereal God is perceived here as self-born in essence, untaught, motherless, unshakable, not to be contained by any name or bearing no specific name. His polyonymic as he could bear many names according to his very diversified attributes. Apollo, like other gods, are only a small portion of this higher God that dwells in fire, and they are all his messengers. Yet we cannot agree to Stephen Mitchell's theory that these gods were just demoted to the rank of angels, and that we could have here soft monotheism according to Gideon's definition. It is needless to underline in this respect that this highly sophisticated meta language corresponds to a negative theology. Corresponding to a negative theology employs ideas specific to Neoplatonic, Neo-Pythagorean, and late Stoic conceptions of the period. But this language could be easily understandable for the common people as well, and in this very competitive period for all the cults on the eastern fringe of the empire, be they pagan, Jewish, or Christian. This is why only half a century later, another small altar was embedded into the Hellenistic wall of the city, at a very close distance in full awareness of the oracle's content, with the inscription, Chromatis dedicated the lamb to the Most High God in fulfillment of the vow. The place is very important, as Alan Hall noticed in 1978, because Chromatis and her private group of Hypsisterians could pray to their God in the precinct identified by Mitchell with the house of prayer, a Hypsisterian house of prayer, watching the first sun rays at dawn that struck the polygonal Hellenistic wall, similar to the prescriptions of the Clarion oracle. And I quote, "To him, that is to the God, then look and pray at dawn, turning your gaze to the east." The Hypsisterians therefore identify their own highest God with that described by the oracle. Furthermore, another interesting inscription was found on a rectangular block with a statue of Clarion Apollo atop. It was discovered at Meli, the former Kojali there in Pisidia, and belongs to the group of 10 other epigraphs with a similar content that spread throughout the empire, that could refer, according to Mitchell, to the prescriptions of the Clarion oracle given to the Oinoandans. And I quote from Mitchell, "Traditional worshippers will have sought clarification and reassurance through an interpretation. The gods and goddesses text fulfill exactly this role." Claros explained that even though the Olympians ranked below the highest god, it was right to continue to worship them in the traditional way. In various instances, Anatolian inscriptions provide examples of divine hierarchization, where gods acted as divine messengers of a superior god, and their position was not considered as degraded. Their function was to mediate the communication between the superior god and the mortals. For example, men acted as an advocate for a sinner in relation to Zeus in a confession inscription. In other instances, in most of the situations when the god man, received dedications together with other deities like Artemis and Aethys, he is placed in a position that could be considered as superior hierarchy. Returning to the highest god, there are numerous examples when he is accompanied on the dedications both by other gods and by divine beings that could be considered angelic in nature. Due to the fact that in almost all dedications the other divine assistants are placed mostly after the Most High God, but venerated along with him, could be a proof of their lesser position within the divine hierarchy and not of an existence of a so-called pagan monotheism. Thus, in Kos, Zeus Hypsistos was venerated together with Hera Urania, Poseidon Asphaleus, Apollo and other gods. At Nisa in Italia, a thanksgiving to the Lyciarches Marcus Aurelius Dionysius is attested to the Most High God, addressed to the Most High God, to the Mountain Mother, an unknown god whose name is incomplete, he starts with Kele, and to all the other gods and goddesses. A dedication written on a rectangular stone block from Stratonicea in Caria is placed, and I quote, to Zeus, the Most High, Hecate, the Savior, Zeus Capitolimus, and the fortune of the venerated Emperor Caesar Titus Aelius Hadrianus Antoninus Augustus Pius. A certain Ariadne, a sacred slave from the autochthonous Mother of Gods, erected an altar together with her son Paramonos in Lefkapetra near Beroia, Macedon, according to the command received from the Most High God. The divine order is mentioned twice in this inscription. Moreover, a priest of Menuranius Quintus Numerius dedicated an altar to Theos Hypsistos in thanksgiving in accordance to an oracular vision that he received from this god. Finally, there is a curious case on a Lydian epigraph that mentions an oath accomplished by a certain Mantine, who prayed for her husband Glaucus, where the name of Theos Hypsistos, initially written on stone, was thereafter erased and replaced by that of Hosius Caedicaius. Georg Wetzel gives two possible explanations for this. Either Hosius Caedicaius was a divine mediator between her and Theos Hypsistos and was perceived as being issued as an emanation of the later, or that this Hosius Caedicaius was actually the Most High God in his predominant aspect of holy and just. We will return to this idea. Divine beings, angelic or not, are frequently met in the company of the Most High God, especially in northeastern Lydia and Caria, where thanksgivings are given to him and to the divine, to the royal divine, the great divine, the good divine, the heavenly divine angel, the divine angel, or the good angel. At Ancyra in Galatia, dedication mentions that the buildings were erected, and I quote, to the great Most High and heavenly God, to his angels, and for his venerable house of prayer. It was perhaps probably due to both his solar attributes, but also as a God of justice, that the Most High God was twice identified in inscriptions with Helios, who had the capacity of being all-seeing God, an all-seeing God, just like the ethereal, clarion supreme God with whom Oinondo his Hypsarians identified their deity. He is the dreadful and vengeful protector of both living and the dead, and also their savior. At Damastris in Paphlagonia, his image was that of a dreadful, supreme, eternal, omnipotent master who rules everywhere. It was by prophetic voice that an altar was raised to the Most High God, and I quote from the inscription, to the Most High God, he who is in the power of youth, has power of everything, who cannot be seen, whose gaze is so dreadful that overthrows the mortal ground. We encounter the same accent on its immortality set in two other dedications. One from Pergamon, where Zopirius erected an altar and a lamp with the support to the God, Lord, the one who is forever. And another one from Hadrianopolis in Bithynia, related to Aurelius Epitimetos, his wife Basilike, and their children, who dedicate an altar to Theos Hypsistos as an immortal god. Theos Athanos. One of the funerary imprecation inscriptions from Macedonia and Phrygia provides the image of the Most High God as the protector of the dead, using the preventive curse called Eumenian formula against any eventual desecrator of the grave. The potential culprit is thus menaced that, and I quote, he will have to reckon with the Most High God, and may the seeker of curse come into his house and leave no one behind. As a polymorphic god, he probably absorbed the identities of many local deities in Macedon and Samaria, for example, gods of mountains, in Bosporan area of an Iranian god, in Syro-Palmyrian area as a god of the heaven, and even in Western Asia, most probably Zeus Bronton, or the thundering Zeus. In a series of inscriptions from Palmyra dated from the beginning of the 2nd century and the second half of the 3rd centuries, the dedications addressed to Zeus Hypsistos Kaepikos have, as Palmyrian translation, the name of Baal-Shamir, the Great and Merciful. Even remote, situated in the uppermost spheres of the universe, the highest God has a personal bond to the dedicants by communicating with them directly or through intermediaries, helping the ones in need and providing them the means for their salvation. It was a whole community belonging to a village next to Prusa in Bithynia that provides thanksgivings to Zeus Hypsistos according to a vow, because the god determined Paterion, we don't know how, probably through a divine order, to generously donate to the rural community an arable land that produced Medinoi. We supposed he might have done that in a very difficult period for the whole community during famine, earthquake, or any other calamity. There are numerous situations when certain individuals, either alone or together with friends, relatives, the whole families, provide dedications and exporters to the God for their deliverance from grave dangers. Gaius Christianus Onesimus from Kyzikos in Mysia even adding for the victory, or for their own well-being, personal family deliverance, or even in some inscription for saving his cattle and his family. Aurelius Hekatomnon from Straordinaria in Caria, in his altars, erected an altar and prayed to the royal divine and most high for himself and for the children, wife, friends, relatives, his immediate family, and for the city. Some dedicants found themselves at the mercy of the god. Having made a vow, Aurelius Asclepiades, together with his family, delivered thanksgiving to the Most High God at Aizan in Phrygia because of merciful delivery from many sufferings. As a token of appreciation for deliverance from their diseases, some of the dedicants provided votive objects with a representation of the healed parts of the body, a practice that is suggested for other thaumaturgic healing gods like Asclepius or Serapis. A bronze plaque, now in the custody of the Museum for Arts and Crafts in Hamburg, has an accurate representation of a partial human face between cheekbones and eyebrows, where the character seems to be eye-crossed. The text can read, "To the listening Most High God, Aurelia Artemisia from Ephesus, having made a vow, found his pity, dedicated this." In other instances, epikos that we encountered as epithet here is accompanied by a visual representation of heirs as a token of appreciation for the fact that the god listens to the prayer of the dedicant without delay, or support for lighting a lamp. Another bronze female torso of an unknown Anatolian provenance has the following incised inscription: Moschene, in fulfillment of the vow to the Most High God. The god is also manifested himself through visions, epiphanies, commands, oracles, And this is why many times we encounter expressions like katonar, katipitagen, katachresmon, or katakeles. This reflects a close personal relationship with the god and a good deal of confidence. In Pergamon, Glycina is grateful to Theoscypsus probably because after inquiring the god, she could make a decision. Oracles could be delivered not only by individuals, but also to the professionals. Two Milesian honor inscriptions are dedicated by local professional associations of city gardeners and razor fishermen to praise their benefactor Ulpius Carpus, the priest and prophet of the Most High God that received both epithet Savior and Holy. From a curious inscription belonging to the area of Napoleon and Phrygia, we find that the honored character was a man of noble offspring named Zosimos, highly esteemed in his fatherland, whom Robin Lane Fox considered wrongly to be Christian. As the 3rd century text of the epigram reads, he most probably belonged to the people of the Most High God. According to the translation of Angelos Haniotis, wrote, whatever mortals need on a folded tablet with spiritual writings and Homeric verses predicting the wives of the future. There is nothing in the text about this scripture, the Holy Scripture. The Homeromanteon from a 4th century magic papyrus, now in London, we can see how this type of Homeromanteon could work. It functioned like a dice oracle, in a very similar way to the 28th Astragalomantea discovered in the southern part of Anatolia, published by Johannes Nolle quite recently. In this papyrus, the 216 hexameter verses from Iliad and Odyssey were ordered in groups of 6 verses and served as answers to mantic inquiries. The oracular process began with the invocation of Apollo, not like Hermes in Anatolia. 3 dice were used to find the right combination corresponding to the proper verse. Finally, a 2nd century inscription from Ternessus in Pisidia reads, Typhos, the one who was also named Attalianus, son of Hermias, grandson of Hermias, the Syrian Paraikos, erected this monument to the listening Most High God with a foot that follows the god in accordance to the god's command. According to Mitchell, bronze left foot of a normal size should have been placed above the small inscribed column in reminding of the materiality of the divine presence and visitation, and in the event of the reiteration of the divine revelation. Most probably, the epiphanic tangible presence of the Most High God was perceived as a miracle for the foreign Syrian resident of Ternessus, but not necessarily as a healing miracle. All indications that we have point to the fact that in this case, this extraordinary epiphanic miracle concerned rather a miracle of faith that determined Typhos to follow the god. And this is why the foot that follows the god. The god ordered him to remind people of the Epiphany and to advertise the power of God. As in other instances of divine feet and footprints analyzed by Georgia Petridou in her studies, this Ichnos monument, together with its material representation, could have become an object of viewing and prosternation. Unlike other deities present in the Anatolian area, notably Men, Anaïtis, Asclepios, Isis, or Serapis, the emphasis in this case of the Most High God is on the not on aretology or exaltation of divine powers in order to glorify the attributes of the divinity, but rather this type of theological message is implicit in the kind of language used and emphasis on the exceptional characters of the God the close, direct personal link between the divinity and the worshipper, his quality of protector and savior, all-powerful supreme God and arbiter of destinies. The God probably did not need archaeologists in the Hypsisterian view, but thanksgiving, humble obedience, total compliance, and prayers. We therefore have to deal with a healer, savior, anonymous God that communicates with the dedicants through visions and epiphanies, whose real identity had to remain unknown due to the dedicants' own volition in this respect. Thank you.
I would like you to ask questions or to express remarks. On the Most High God.
Unknown.
Please, Stefano.
Some remarks. Thank you, Dan, for your very interesting presentation. I just want to underline a few things. One, the use of the terms pagan monotheism, which I find
sia quello della Dacia o della Messia inferiore, sia quello del tardo del Basso Danubio, chiamato da alcuni Sciticus, è uno dei settori più dinamici e prolifici della ricerca dell'antichità classica e post-classica carpato-danubiana, con risultati veramente notevoli. Molti di essi sono stati correlati in maniera molto soddisfacente con le informazioni letterarie e soprattutto epigrafiche. È auspicabile tuttavia che la ricerca romena sull'Imes diventi un interlocutore più attivo nel dibattito storiografico internazionale riguardante la definizione del concetto di limes, il ruolo e lo scopo della frontiera terrestre o fluviale da un punto di vista sequenziale, regionale, sia come sistema, come meccanismo di un'eventuale grand strategy o petite strategie, conoscete bene l'espressione Boe e altri, i vari status e il ruolo delle varie categorie di truppe stazionate nelle Tures, Castra, Castella, Umile, eccetera, le funzioni delle ultime e il rapporto con altre strutture, infrastrutture topografiche e architettoniche, città interne, strade, orea, eccetera, il rapporto tra milites, provinciales e gentiles. In questo senso riteniamo che sarebbe necessaria una più attenta rilettura delle fonti letterarie e un maggiore approfondimento del significato dei vocaboli propri del linguaggio amministrativo e giuridico latino, parallelamente a una maggiore apertura verso approcci teorici suscettibili di offrire solidi strumenti concettuali e metodologici, con la manifestazione di un entusiasmo più contenuto e di uno spirito critico più acuto nei confronti delle diverse e divergenti opinioni formulate in sintesi o studi di storia militare romana che sono scritti di non storici. Questo perché a molte di queste opinioni, alcune con riferimento diretto alla frontiera danubiana, non mancano punti discutibili e delicati, esagerazioni, mancata presa in considerazione delle informazioni scomode o l'interpretazione distorta di alcune altre. E in quest'ultima direzione ci sembra di essere testimoni di una situazione strana. Si ammette la veridicità di molti dati storici e si accetta la semantica di alcune nozioni di ambiti lessicali diversi, istituzionale, politico, ideologico, morale, religioso, veicolati da scritti come quelli di Tacitus, Svetoni, Erodiano, Damiano Marcellino, o persino da quelli del carattere artistico più marcato, come creazioni poetiche, orazioni, la storia augusta. Ma quando si tratta del limes, quasi tutto viene messo in dubbio, se non negato dal punto di vista della credibilità, del significato e della realtà storica. Tuttavia è rassicurante constatare che analisi più approfondite delle informazioni sull'Imes presenti negli scritti dell'epoca dell'impero classico, ad esempio quelli di Dacia, o della tarda antichità, per esempio panegirici latini, scusatemi il personaggismo, ma anche io ho studiato il concetto di Limes in panegirici latini, Libanio, Temmisto, Damiano Marcellino, Storia Augusta, Orosio, il Codice Teodosiano, Sosimo, hanno dimostrato che il limes non è per niente, cito, un terme impropre pour un concept ambigu, chiuso, e che il suo significato è molto più complesso, anche in totale dissonanza con quello avanzato, ad esempio, da un stimato e influente ricercatore dei limiti dell'impero, The Limits of Empire, conoscete il titolo di un celebre libro. Allo stesso modo, tali approcci sono un stimolo a guardare con diffidenza questioni e opinioni come quelle che stiamo per menzionare, che alcuni definirebbero elegantemente dei paradossi. Cito, le limes est-il une réalité historique? Non, une réalité extraterrestre. Le limes n'a jamais existé. Le limes è un'invenzione. Nel secolo IV il Danubio non è una frontiera, ma che The Roman state did not defend provinciales and never took this responsibility because such a notion of defense was alien to the mentality of Rome, eccetera, eccetera. Tali formule strabilianti hanno però il merito di esortare a riprendere lo studio delle fonti antiche e analizzare le nozioni nel contesto della costellazione lessicale e semantica di cui fanno parte, nonché le connessioni e le tensioni che appaiono al riguardo tra le diverse categorie di fonti. Proprio per questa ragione, per quanto ci riguarda, ci schieriamo con quelli storici per il quale il valore e la dignità delle fonti antiche, giudicate ovviamente secondo tutti i rigori della critica, sono più importanti delle strategie militari moderne e le somiglianze ai comportamenti imperialisti contemporanei, come la difesa del Sudan britannico alla fine del XIX secolo. C'è un'ironia, ma l'esempio proviene dalla storiografia dedicata all'Ines. Le poche idee sul Danubio e sul confine danubiano nella tarda antichità, che non pretendono in alcun modo di dire più di quanto richiesto dal buon senso generato dallo studio attento delle fonti, mirano solo a invitare la ricerca romena dell'Ines ad assumarsi il dialogo critico con la storiografia estera, non soltanto scavi archeologici, ma anche un dialogo teorico, diciamo. Cessando di essere un fiume interno dopo l'abbandono della Dacia nel III-IV del III secolo, il Danubio si univa alle barriere naturali, rispettivamente ai grandi fiumi che attraversavano la mappa dell'impero, come ci teneva ad affermare l'oratore Mamertino nel 1191. Remus et Hister et Nilus et congenio Tigris Eufrate et uterte Vasole Macipit a Redit Oceanus. Più precisamente, tornava a essere uno degli antichi confini, fines pristini secondo Eutropio, antiqui termini secondo Rosio, che separavano l'impero dal mondo barbaro, Danubius de occidentalibus partibus, barbarorum ad Romanorum intersencas populos, done ponto ipse condatur, menziona Ambrogio da Milano nel Hexameron. Danubius a barbarico secludit, scrive Orosio, e indicava il limite fino al quale si estendeva la romana dicio. Finis e terminus hanno, come è noto, una semantica abbastanza precisa nel linguaggio amministrativo giuridico e politico latino. Il primo designa il limite estremo naturale o artificiale dell'impero o di una sua suddivisione amministrativa, Tracie Fines Alessandrie, mentre il secondo esprime l'idea di territorializzazione dell'impero, terminus Romani imperi, scriveva primo Impero, intra terminos imperi, menzionava Tacito negli anni, delimitando nettamente lo spazio imperiale, hic imperium, da quello trovatosi al extra terminos, come risulta senza equivoci dallo stesso oratore citato sopra. Allo stesso tempo, secondo i trattati geodetici, insieme all'Imes di cui parleremo più avanti, vi sono parole che si ritrovano originariamente in relazione all'organizzazione del territorio. Nel contesto geografico che ci interessa, il Danubio segnava indubbiamente il confine settentrionale dello Stato romano. Remus Danubiusque ad septentrionem, scrive Aurelio Vitore nelle Storie abbreviate, delle sue strutture territoriali. La Dacia da Aureliano est dextra Danubio in mare fluenti cum anche affluerit in leva, precisava Eutropio. Quindi, a partire dall'ultimo quarto del IV secolo, il Danubio era una linea di demarcazione, un confine naturale, ripa, che delimitava la sovranità politica, i limiti amministrativi, la specificità culturale e il carattere etnico specifici dello Stato romano. In molte fonti questo aspetto è dimostrato anche dall'uso di alcune preposizioni specifiche della groma, con l'aiuto delle quali viene chiaramente specificata la delimitazione spaziale e dunque l'area delle competenze giuridiche, amministrative e fiscali romane. Ad ribam Danubii, circa flumen histrum, citra flumen, per Danubium, trans Danubium, transistrum, transflumen Danubium, transflumen histrum, ultra flumen, usque, ad Danubium usque, Danubium amnem usque Danubium. Di conseguenza, histri margines, supercilia histri o ripe Danubii, come troviamo nelle fonti, rappresentano la frontiera di entità etniche e politiche diverse. Sulla riva destra di quel celebre fiume, un exteriore implichi fluminis ribam, diceva Claudio Mamertino nella Gratiarum Actio Juliano Imperatori, pronunciato il 1 gennaio 360 a Costantinopoli, si trova l'impero. Sulla sinistra, ad Levam, sull'altra riva del fiume, ex parte altera, il territorio dei barbari, barbaricum solum. Amiano Marcellini è ancora più categorico, evocando le iniziative costruttive di Valeriano I nel settore danubiano, apprezzava lo sforzo lodevole del sovrano di fortificare il limes, studio unienorum limitum, ma allo stesso tempo, come ha notato anche Büsabach, condannava la sua iniziativa di violare i confini dei vari, costruendo fortificazioni difensive, presidiarie, castra, oltre il fiume Istro, transflumen Istrum, sui territori stessi dei Quadi, in ipsis quadorum teris, come se, scriveva con disapprovazione, questi fossero sotto giurisdizione romana, quasi romano iuri. Così riconosceva come fatto indiscutibile che il Danubio era il limite permesso della sovranità romana. Inoltre, descrivendo la conclusione del feudus del 369 tra Valente e Atanarico, Rex Votorum et Lingonium Iudex, precisava che esso era avvenuto in medium flumen, in medio flumine. L'episodio è stato interpretato da alcuni da un lato come un fallimento e un'umiliazione dell'imperatore che per 3 anni consecutivi aveva attraversato il fiume per spedizioni senza risultati spettacolari in genitalibus terris del capo Goto, ed altro come una vittoria morale di quest'ultimo, Atanarico, che si era valso di scrupoli religiosi per evitare la presenza sul suolo romanum. Tuttavia, come dimostrato molto recentemente da Rosalba Arcuri, è proprio questa dimensione spirituale a rinforzare il ruolo di confine, di barriera naturale del Danubio. Il Danubio era un vero gotico, no? Del Danubio, che divideva politicamente, militarmente e simbolicamente 2 spazi antitetici. La conferma si ritrova nell'Orazio Decima di Temistio, testimone dell'evento, elogiando con tono enfatico, ovviamente, proprio di ogni enconium, la trasformazione dopo la conclusione della pace da parte di Valente della frontiera danubiana in un muro forte come l'acciaio, teichos salamantinon, che separava i barbari dai romani. L'oratore ribadiva l'idea, evidenziata anche da Geoffrey Pretrex e Jan Bildentriber, che sia i romani che i goti avevano una chiara coscienza tra il loro del territorio e della frontiera e consideravano il Danubio come la linea di demarcazione tra i loro territori. Il caso del tutto simile del Reno è offerto dall'episodio evocato sempre da Amiano della trattativa di pace nel 364 tra Valentiniano I e il re degli Alamani Macriano su una nave in mezzo al fiume. Inoltre la comparsa verso il 330-340, come dimostrato da Evelyn Weber del termine Romagna e la sua successiva proliferazione nei testi latini con il significato di territorio romano, orbis romanus, e potere politico romano, imperio romano, indica l'esistenza di un'idea ben definita nella comprensione politica e letteraria dell'epoca circa lo spazio strettamente confinante da Roma. Ritornando al confine danubio, il passaggio da una riva all'altra significava una trasgressione politica, sociale, giuridica. Transflumen i romani uscivano dalla Romagna ed entravano nel barbarico, in solo barbarico, un paese nemico, l'Emilia, lo spazio di entità etnopolitiche, Carpia, Sarmatia, Putia, Gotia, il cui confine definitivo era soltanto il lictus citicum del Hister Fluvius. Abbiamo usato una espressione arcaisante di Marziano Capella del V secolo. Citra Flumen, i barbari si insediavano in traspazia orbis romani, diventano tributari e offrendo aiuto militare. Il problema spinoso del post-liminium che ha preoccupato i giuristi latini e la sofisticata tipologia delle terre di confine, amministrate, non amministrate, misurate, assegnate, archivinius, occupatorius, rientrano nello stesso ambito della delimitazione precisa del confine e della definizione esatta dello status giuridico delle persone e del territorio limitrofo. Si è detto a ragione che le frontiere dell'impero sono state permeabili, dinamiche, spesso piene di tensione. Il Danubio non è affatto eccezione, è stato spesso associato a una zona di conflitto. Danui tote volerent cum prelia ripe, diceva Claudio Claudiano nel Panegiricus del quarto consulato Honori Augusti, tenuto nel 398, riferendosi in termini retorici ma non implausibili alle calamità che si erano abbattute sui Balcani, sull'Ilirico e sull'Italia dopo quella terribile Iliada delle disgrazie dell'Istro, come l'oratore che l'Istro caratterizzava gli eventi circoscritti al disastro di Adrianopoli del 368. Dire però che Ripa Danubi fosse inefficace, penetrabile al punto di essere completamente permeabile, di interesse secondario da parte dall'autorità imperiale rispetto al Reno e quindi meno difesa, mi pare troppo. Certo, i confini dell'impero non sono assimilabili a quelli moderni. Arrivato sulla sponda romana del fiume, non si veniva accolti di qualche funzionario imperiale con un cortese beneveristis in Romaniam. Inoltre, è fuori ogni dubbio che il Danubio potesse essere traversato senza soverchie difficoltà, ma in determinate circostanze che le fonti antiche indicano molto esplicitamente: naturali, la frammentazione del corso d'acqua da porzioni di terreno, la presenza di zone paludose e non navigabili, climatiche durante l'inverno o nei periodi di siccità, militari, riduzione delle truppe su richieste di altri settori, distanza troppo ampie tra le guarnigioni, disciplina dei soldati, e economiche, carenza del sistema anonario. In tali casi i latrunculi clandestini, ricordate dall'iscrizione di Carcaliu, provincia di Puglia, o le incursioni di latrocinale sglobi menzionate da Damiano, potevano costituire un problema causando danni locali, come riconosce Temistio, senza però richiedere la mobilitazione di tutte le truppe del confine e senza mettere in pericolo l'esistenza dello Stato romano. In condizioni normali invece, il corso inferiore dell'Istro, con la sua portata abbondante, Hister septentrionalis partibus proflus, dice Pseudo Sipo, incrementata dai numerosi affluenti, abundas aquarum hister ad venarum magnitudine fluenti, dice Amiano, con il suo letto ampio e profondo, costituiva una barriera naturale e difensiva, hostes coerget, dice Pseudo, e che si può difficile da attraversare. Per amnem longe omnium difficilimum, scrive Ammiano, offrendo così protezione contro le incursioni provenienti da noi. Questo aspetto rafforzava lo status ufficiale di barriera politica, economica e militare riconosciuta a livello internazionale, che imponeva una permissività limitata, come si è visto nel 366 quando intervinci i Teutongi in quanto entità politica, non come la Tuncuri sono fino ad oggi. Hanno inviato legati a chiedere ai rappresentanti di frontiera dello Stato romano o direttamente al principe il permesso di entrare nell'impero. Sono stati accettati o respinti pro visione valentis o permisso imperatoris. Tuttavia, non essendo eronetica, la difesa di questa riva non era priva di difficoltà. Giulio Valerio, ex Bulgaris veteranus, dedicava al Tropeum Traiani, una città all'interno della provincia, no? Fatto significativo allora, un altare al difensore del confine, Ercole Ripensis, mentre molti imperatori, almeno fino ai Teodosiani, sono come Galerio una presenza costante e attiva ad Rippam Danubi, oppure in Rippa, dove affrontavano le genti da fuori, ungentibus barbaris carentus in vacanza. Proprio per questo motivo, tale linea di demarcazione naturale tra il territorio romano e quello barbaro è stata raddoppiata da una linea artificiale, un limes. Questo non è né la sede né il momento per entrare nella questione complicata più del necessario da alcuni studiosi contemporanei dell'Imes. Riteniamo però che alcune cose siano, secondo noi, indiscutibili, perché le fonti letterarie ed epigrafiche, nonché le scoperte archeologiche, ci sembrano più precise e credibili delle dimostrazioni sofisticate formulate da alcuni specialisti contemporanei che, come ho detto, non sono storici. Il limes Danubio non è un'invenzione, come abbiamo detto, era prima di tutto un confine fisico associato alla barriera naturale del fiume, Danubi, Limes et Reni, diceva Ausone nel Graziano Mazio pronunciato nel 369 in onore del Graziano. Ammiano lo chiama inequivocabilmente Noster Limes e Romanus Limes e l'Storia Augusta Limes Barbarus, a sottolineare che si trovava in prossimità del mondo barbaro. A metà del IV secolo Festo lo conferma con la precisione di un grammatico Limes inter Romanus ab Barbaros ab Augusta Vindelicum Bernolicum Anulie ab Meostiam est Constitutus. Come ha notato anche Maria Luisa Fede nella sua eccelsa edizione dello scritto dell'Epitomatore, l'espressione limes est constitutus, dove costituire ha il significato di stabilire, definire, determinare, si incontra nel grammatico igino, che usa anche l'espressione limitum constitutio. Il limes danubiano non ha avuto solo, cito, una funzione organizzativa più che difensiva, come scrivo un stimato collega di qui da Roma, dalla Sapienza, oppure solo il ruolo di vigilare i provinciali, di controllare la circolazione delle persone e delle merci, come dicono altri, ma è stato un confine rigoroso e prevalentemente difensivo, destinato a fermare la penetrazione di quei prossimi hostes, come diciamo, dalla sponda settentrionale. Di questo fatto vi sono prove letterarie, epigrafiche, archeologiche. Basti ricordare qui le informazioni delle resistenze armennee sull'Imes, ottimamente valorizzate da Wilhelm Drischers, nonché il messaggio categorico di Temistio nell'Orazio Decima per il Trattato di Pace, analizzato con grande accuratezza più di 2 decenni fa da Milena Raimondi. Lo stretto legame con strutture civili o militari dell'interno, come dimostra ad esempio la nota iscrizione del Tropeum Traiani degli anni della diarchia costantiniana, ad confirmando ambitis tutela organismi, civile, auspicare fondamentalmente si rigide opere consultaes, accresce la sua funzione difensiva. Questa si era imposta come una necessità a causa di un evento che gli storici romeni della provincia della Scizia, Giovanni, Alessandro Bardi e altri hanno costantemente evidenziato e che altri dimenticano: il trasferimento della capitale dell'impero sul rive del Bosforo. Recentemente Silvento Stefan ha spiegato la militarizzazione della regione frontaliera dei Balcani, compresa quindi la linea del Danubio, come una formula intelligente e suggestiva: la constantinopolarizzazione dei Balcani dall'antichità. Di conseguenza, il limes andriano non è stato affatto una frontiera di secondaria importanza rispetto al Reno, come sostengono alcuni. Inoltre, poiché il Danubio era considerato una linea di demarcazione tra l'impero e le formazioni barbariche, come abbiamo già sottolineato, il limes, quindi confine artificiale militare, ha inglobato anche la sponda sinistra del fiume, fatto concretizzato nella costruzione di infrastrutture militari, Turres, Castella, Borgi, Iter, Forsevala, attestate anche esse dall'archeologia, dalla geografia, dalla letteratura. Questa concezione dell'espansione della frontiera fortificata Utrac Ripa Danubii, espressione della novella undicesima di Giustiniano del 535, si inquadra perfettamente nel pensiero politico e strategico romano, come scriveva Festo a proposito dell'espansione dell'impero in Oriente. Limes orientalis suprarimpam ticrilis est institutus. Limes instituere e supraripa o supraripas sono sintagmi usati nei trattati di Roma e di strategia militare. Questa espansione sulla sponda sinistra del fiume, in parallelo alla presenza di truppe di Puni attestate dalla notizia di Dignitatum, non prova per niente, a nostro avviso, il carattere offensivo della politica romana nel basso Danubio, come sostenuto almeno da uno studio romeno dedicato alla storia militare della Dacia post-aureliana. Le iniziative belliche di Costantino e Valente e quelle edilizio militare di Costantino e Giustiniano a nord del fiume rientrano in quella che Melena Raimondi chiamava, cito, una aggressiva politica militare difensiva, e Geoffrey Greatrex, a policy of defensive imperialism. La conclusione di struttura di difesa indica la rinuncia all'espansione e il riconoscimento di un limite fisso e chiaramente percepibile per chi si trova sia all'interno sia all'esterno. Dopo Aureliano l'impero è diventato uno spazio relativamente chiuso, solidum imperium, e la missione dei sovrani, come riconoscevano consensualmente molti autoritari, era quella di consolidare, cioè che già possedavano. Nessuna fonte storica attesta, con le espressioni ben note, in provinciam facere, in provinciam religere, in provincie formam religere, in formam provinciam accidere, in ius provincie redigere, provincie ius impone reggere, la creazione di una struttura amministrativo-territoriale o fiscale a nord del Danubio. La Dacia restituta, menzionata nel panegirico di Annonimo per Costanzo Cesare nel 296, e come abbiamo recentemente cercato di mostrare, la Dacia meridionale, non quella a nord del Danubio, come alcuni ricercatori suggeriscono o addirittura sostengono. All'inizio del V secolo Rosio scriveva che la Dacia era perduta per sempre, nam Dacia transdanubium in perpetuum opertus. La conclusione di Föderer e un rex datus come quello nominato da Costanzo II nelle Sarmazia sono aspetti che hanno a che vedere con altre componenti di quello che, adattando le espressioni di Peter Kitzer e Alexander Sarantis, potremmo chiamare the Roman art of management of barbarians. Ma poiché non si trattava di Roman Agmolain, come sostiene Lindrelis, in determinate circostanze politiche e militari la frontiera dunana è diventata un fractus limes, fractus Danubi limes, come scrive Girolamo nell'epistola 123 del 409, fino a quando è stata completamente annientata nel primo decennio del VI secolo. Grazie.
Grazie professore.
Grazie per la lezione, è stata molto interessante, ma possiamo pensare che ovviamente che c'è un cambiamento a confronto con il secondo secolo e il quarto secolo. Se parliamo sul limes danubiano, limes di questa parte del Danubio a partire dalla Pannonia e sul Mar Nero, ci sono alcuni momenti anche storici che sono importantissimi e noi dobbiamo prendere in conto. Per esempio, il primo, cioè ovviamente che tutta questa area è stata colpita in un modo duro durante le invasioni gotiche. Questo non dobbiamo dimenticare. Per esempio, nella notizia Dignitatum non abbiamo nessuna unità militare che ha sopravvissuto terzo secolo, c'è nessuna. Negli altri confini degli imperi ci sono i cohorti Ale, che sono anche dopo, nel IV secolo, inizio del V secolo, che rimangono, sì, ci sono anche nuove arruolate, ma sono anche questi, non abbiamo nessuno. Il secondo, allora possiamo pensare che era un disastro. Era un disastro, intorno al 260 era un disastro. E poi il secondo, che non è, dopo mia opinione, non è così bene preso in conto, è dove ci sono tutti chi sono ritirati dalla Dacia. Loro devono abitare in qualche modo. Terzo, anche lei ha presentato molto bene, l'apparizione di Costantinopoli, che cambia completamente la strategia dell'impero, e in quel momento questa parte del Danubio è trasformata in una pretentura costantinopolitana. Questo è chiaro. Allora, ci sono tutti questi che lei ha parlato dal punto di vista, diciamo, della propaganda imperiale, che cerca di spiegare perché Roma, Imperium, il potere del popolo romano non è più capace di andare più avanti ai confini del Danubio. E per questo penso che sì, a livello propagandistico lei ha completamente ragione, ma questo livello propagandistico, dopo la mia opinione, ha cercato a trovare un modo di spiegare la incapacità dell'impero di fare di più in quel momento.
Grazie. Non tutti i ricercatori sono d'accordo con lei, anch'io non sono d'accordo. Io ho parlato soprattutto sulla dall'antichità e non ho parlato soltanto dal punto di vista della propaganda. Questi sono storici, abbiamo Marcellino, Festo e Eutrope, erano personaggi della corte, conoscevano bene. E poi c'è una realtà, a proposito del fatto che non siamo d'accordo, tutti dicono l'impero non è caduto fino all'inizio del VI secolo. Sono stati periodi, come ha detto lei molto bene, nel tempo della crisi, e poi, ma l'impero non è caduto, la frontiera è rimasta, l'impero è qui. Questo è il problema, che sono momenti difficili, che le truppe sono scomparse, ma anche dopo Adrianopoli, questo è un problema che tanti studiosi di quale parlano, tanti studiosi dopo Adrianopoli. Adrianopoli noi sappiamo, sì, era un disastro, ma l'impero è qui, la frontiera è. Questo è il problema, che dopo Adrianopoli vediamo un'attività costruttiva molto attiva sull'Ines. Questo è il mio punto di vista, ma lei conoscete bene il terreno, diciamo, no? Perché lavorare lei e altri colleghi,
anche i colleghi di
il mio
Capitano, per
problema,
esempio.
il mio contributo era di invitare lei di parlare con questi studiosi, che tanti di loro sono extraterreni, scusatemi. Che è successo?
Ah no, niente. No, ma io
Sì,
io volevo dire che mi sembra, almeno le cose che l'avevo detto, a partire da questi autori del IV secolo, che mi sembrano, cioè, una impressione che abbiamo fatto un cambio fra un imperium sine fine a un imperio cum fine. E questo mi sembra che è molto interessante a livello anche propagandistico, perché nel quel momento loro devono spiegare perché.
Ma abbiamo Macino dice.
Sì, per questo, sì, no, c'era una cosa che va nella stessa via, più o meno.
Come ho cercato di, non soltanto a livello di propaganda, io, come avete visto, ho cercato di trovare anche termini nella letteratura romanica, nella letteratura della Sessione allora giuridica, fatto questo contributo non sono tanti problemi, ma sono termini che troviamo nei atti amministrativi, giuridici, eccetera, che sono molto freddi, non è Amiano che parla o Claudio Claudiano che è un oratorio, no? Ma questi termini sono termini precisi, i romani erano giuristi, ecco perché dico che queste domande, queste frasi sono stupide. Come puoi fare questa domanda? L'Inis in non esiste. Come i romani erano giuristi, loro non avevano la proprietà del termine. Come è possibile dire questo? Io non capisco, non lo so se ho ragione, ma erano giuristi, erano molto precisi. Io vi invito a contribuire a questo dialogo con la letteratura. Io non sono un archeologo come lei, ma ho letto perché devo leggere come professore di storia romana, no? Sono sorpreso di queste affermazioni, mi dispiace perché non ha parlato di cristianesimo e dell'illuminismo, questo è un altro problema, probabilmente l'aspetto più permissivo della frontiera namibiana. Carla, mi scusi perché non ho parlato, lo so che tu hai aspettato ma non ho parlato. Questo era lo scopo della mia relazione, soprattutto di invitare i colleghi romeni che sono archeologi di livello europeo, di partecipare a questo dialogo